Hello, hello, hello. Hello. Oh, how are you doing this week? How are you feeling? Hope you're doing all right. I hope that you're feeling good. I'm your host, Steven, aka Mount Analogue. Welcome, everyone, to Analog Thoughts. If you're new here, we cover things like history, science, technology, spirituality, weird stuff, wild stuff. It's really just a mixed bag altogether. At the beginning of these episodes, I like to do a bit of a life update. I don't have a ton to report on since the last episode. I've been writing 1K words every day. And does anyone play No Man's Sky? It's like a space exploration game. It's my favorite game, and I've put an embarrassing amount of hours into it. You basically fly around a procedurally generated universe and look at plants and animals. That's the whole premise. There is a deeper premise to the game than that, like a deeper meaning to the game than that. But for the most part, you just fly around and look at interesting planets and stuff on those planets. That's the basis of the game. But anyway, I downloaded it on Switch because I play on Steam, and there's supposed to be this cross save function where you can port your save between consoles or between PC and another like PS5 or Xbox or Switch or whatever. But it says that it's full. All the lobbies are full, so I bought it on Switch, and I was like, cool, I'll just transfer my save over and I can have like a handheld No Man's Sky. But it's full. That's probably that's the most juicy drama in my life right now. I can't get my No Man's Sky port. Such nerdery. Such deep nerdery. Also on the Switch, and you can laugh at me here if you want, I'm a super big comic book fan. I'm a big nerd. And if you didn't already know, I'm a big nerd. And I've played through Arkham Asylum, the Batman game, but on Switch they had all of the Arkham games, and I downloaded Arkham City, and I've been playing that, and it's so good. And I have to say, if you have a Switch, the port is really good. It looks good, and it plays well. They ported it very, very nicely. And it's my first playthrough of it. I know it's an old game now, but I've never played through it, and it's really fun. I just really love Batman's villains. It starts off with Two-Face, and then it gets into Penguin, and I just did the Solomon Grundy fight, and there's Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze. Batman has the best villains, in my opinion, of all of the comic books. I think I love the universe of Gotham and Batman's world. If you got a Switch, download it. It's like $10 right now. I'm going to see this band later today called Uncle Acid up in Michigan, and I honestly don't know a ton about them, but I've listened to a handful of albums that they've made, and they make music for horror movies that don't exist, specifically for Italian giallo style horror movies. And it's just really like trippy, psychedelic, fused with metal and heavier stuff. It's really interesting music. It's a band that Mallory really likes, and she asked me if I wanted to go, and I was like, yes, let's go. This seems cool. It sounds cool. So I know very little about them. I've listened to 2 albums all the way through, and it'll be an interesting experience going to see a band. I've done it before. I'm sure everyone listening has done it before, where you go to see a concert of a band or a musician or whatever that you don't really know too much about. And oftentimes I've found personally when I do that, it elevates my interest in them. Before Billy Strings blew up, I saw him, or well, he was like he was on the come up, but I saw him at the small festival in Ohio, 45 minutes from my house, and there were a few hundred people there, but now he's like selling out Red Rocks and stuff. But I saw him when he was on the come up there, and I was like, who is this guy? This is amazing. And our friend really liked him, and then I grew to really like him as well. So I feel like this will happen with Uncle Acid. This kind of not introduction, but this more of a deeper dive into them in a live experience will probably elevate my fandom of them. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think it's going to be really fun. We're also going to stop by Mom's Spaghetti. It's 3 minutes from the venue. If you don't know what Mom's Spaghetti is, it's the rapper Eminem. He has a spaghetti restaurant called Mom's Spaghetti up in Michigan. So we're going to go there and eat some spaghetti before the show. One more thing. I like to also give a Felix update. These are just little segments I've been doing. I've been trying to turn into tradition at these shows, giving a life update, giving a Felix update at the beginning of the show. Felix is my son. And like myself, I don't have a ton of big updates with Felix. We went swimming over the weekend. I'm getting him ready for these swimming lessons that are coming up. So we all went swimming. The fam went swimming. And it was a blast. He loves the water. He's a water boy. He's saying so many words. He's actually starting to have like real conversations. I can talk to him and ask him questions, and he'll ask me questions, and it's trippy because he's not even 3 and he's just like a grown man. It's insane. I love him so much. Love you, Fifi, baby. One more thing before we get going. Don't forget to leave those likes, those comments, reviews. On whatever platform you're listening on, there is a way to leave a little star rating. The star ratings on Spotify go a really long way, as well as Apple Music. And if you're on YouTube, click that subscribe button. You know all this. You know all the jazz, all that, all that stuff. If you want to take it a step further, I have a Patreon where you get early access to episodes. You get to see early access to songs that I make, works in progress, some art stuff, and all that jazz. The link to that Patreon, or the link to my Patreon, will be in the show's notes if you'd like to check it out. Today, we are tackling a topic that has fascinated humans for centuries, maybe since the dawn of civilization. What if you could live forever? What if death wasn't the inevitable end we've always thought it was? On this episode, I'm talking about immortality, living forever. It's equal parts fascinating and terrifying. And just for the record, I have no interest in living forever. I think it sounds terrible. I think someday, I would like to roll off this mortal coil into the next iteration of whatever comes after we pass into the great beyond. I'm fine with that. I'll die. I'm okay dying. I welcome it at a point. I feel like it's a natural part of the human experience, but maybe someday, decades from now, people will listen to this episode and they'll be like, that guy was tripping because we can live forever now, and it's tight, but I think it's unnatural. I think it's weird. We shouldn't do it. So, first things first, let's talk about the fact that immortality actually kind of already exists in nature. And I don't mean vampires, and I don't mean Keith Richards. There's actually this jellyfish, and I'm going to butcher this name, but it's the Turritopsis dohrnii. It's also known as the immortal jellyfish. But this tiny, transparent creature has the incredible ability to revert its cells back to an earlier stage of development, essentially aging in reverse. When it's threatened or injured, instead of dying, it's like, nope, I'm out. And it hits the biological reset button. Scientists have been studying it to unlock the secrets of its biological cheat code. And I just think if we were able to extract this mechanism, whatever this mechanism is inside of this immortal jellyfish that reverts its cells back to an earlier stage, we'd have all these people going through their midlife crisis, injecting themselves with jellyfish DNA, trying to revert back to a teenager or something. And maybe maybe they'd go too far. They'd inject a little too much and they'd turn into a child or something, and they're like, oh no. It's like in cartoons or movies when you see people walk into the fountain of youth and they stay in a little too long, and then they're like, oh no, I'm a kid again. No, I took it too far. That's what humans are going to be doing with this jellyfish DNA. Beyond this immortal jellyfish, we've got creatures like lobsters. And lobsters don't age in the way that humans do. Sure, they get older, but they don't age like us. As they grow, they keep regenerating and staying biologically young, at least until something kills them, like a predator or disease or a seafood chef. They can die. They're obviously not immortal, but they don't die of old age. They die because they get too big to molt out of their shells, which inevitably kills them of exhaustion because they're trying to molt out of their shells. They're like, I can't do it. I can't. And then they die, which is a crazy way to go out. I can't imagine shedding my skin to have a new shell, and then one day I just can't do it. I'm like, my shell won't expand. I can't do it. And then that's how they die. But if it weren't for their molting process, if it weren't for their exoshell, if it weren't for their shell, they could theoretically live forever. There's also some species of turtles and even certain kinds of fish that have been shown to experience aging in a very similar way. Their aging cells revert into previous younger versions of their former selves. They're kind of like the Benjamin Buttons of the animal kingdom, but they have, there's less Brad Pitt, and there's more tentacles, and there's more lobster claws. But they're kind of aging in reverse. Their old cells become new. And then the last creature in nature that is somewhat immortal, it's not immortal, it's got a shelf life, but you might have heard of it before. It's the Greenland shark. And the Greenland shark can live somewhere, from what I read online, it can live somewhere between 250 and 500 years old. That means that some of these sharks had outlived entire civilizations. So it could have, it's like older than America, older than a lot of civilizations had been or have been. That's existential dread to me, is being born at the beginning of a civilization and then watching it crumble and seeing all of that. It's just another reason that I think death is at a point is going to be welcomed. Who wants to see that? Who wants to watch everyone and everything be born and then crumble around you? I'm good on that. So this all begs the question, could we ever harness these abilities for ourselves? Scientists are trying. I read this book. It's Bill Nye's book. It's right here on my shelf. Hold on. For whatever reason. Oh, okay. So it's right here. It's called Undeniable. And they didn't. My main gripe with it. I'm going to pull it off the shelf real quick. Okay, so it's right here. It's called Undeniable: Evolution and the Science of Creation by Bill Nye. They didn't spell it undeniable like UNDENYEABLE. They just spelled it normal, undeniable, which I think is a very missed opportunity for a book like this. But anyway, in this book, I learned a lot of things, but I also learned that scientists use have used fish DNA on tomato plants because deep sea fish have this thing in their DNA that make them resistant to cold. It makes them resistant to the impacts of extreme cold. So scientists extracted parts of their DNA, fused it with tomato plants, and made these frost-resistant tomato plants. And it worked. These tomato plants were significantly more likely to survive severe cold. But people didn't like it. They were like, this is unnatural. We don't like the fact that you put fish DNA into our tomato plants. Don't do it. We're not buying it. And it was kind of frowned upon. But I feel like once we cross this bridge, or as we cross this bridge with extracting the life extending elements of animal DNA and incorporate them into humans, there's either going to be people are going to be all about it, or they're going to be like, no, absolutely not. This is wrong. What are we doing? We're doing it right now. There are studies going on with animals, and probably behind the scenes, probably with humans as well. But there are studies going on with animals where we are manipulating their DNA to see if we can extend their life. So could we ever harness these abilities for ourselves? Scientists are trying. They're bringing us closer to immortality. And this all kind of brings me to my next set of points. Over time, the quest for human immortality. So for centuries, people have searched for the key to eternal life. Ancient civilizations, from the Sumerians to the Egyptians, spoke of mythical substances that could grant longevity. Alchemists in medieval times were obsessed with the elixir of life, which was a legendary potion that could supposedly grant immortality. They never found this potion, spoiler alert. There was this Chinese emperor named Qin Shi Huang, but he took this whole thing a little too far and actually died from mercury poisoning while trying to achieve eternal youth. He thought that mercury had some sort of, he thought that mercury was the key. He was like, if we consume enough mercury, we can live forever. And this was very wrong. It obviously wound up killing him. So just a note here, if your immortality potion contains heavy metals, maybe reconsider drinking it. Maybe skip it and try something else. But today, we have traded our search for potions with petri dishes, and researchers are looking at ways to slow down, stop, or even reverse aging. Some of the most promising approaches include, but are not limited to, senolytics. Senolytics are drugs designed to eliminate something that scientists call zombie cells that accumulate as we age and contribute to decline. And there have been trials on mice, which have extended the lifespans of the mice and improved their health. And human trials are actually starting, they're beginning. This is wild. I can't imagine going into a lab and being a human test subject and then and the scientists being like, we're going to inject you with this stuff that's going to reverse your age. The fact that this is actually happening is insane. It seems like some kind of like plot out of a 80s B movie that like Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to get involved and he's going to show up and have to shoot up the villains that are turning everyone into these creatures with their serums. Our next promising approach to slowing down or reversing aging is the telomere extension. Every time our cells divide in our body, the protective caps on the ends of our DNA, called telomeres, they get shorter. And eventually, this leads to aging and cell death. This is the primary reason our cells die. Our telomeres get shorter and shorter and shorter. But scientists are working on ways to extend telomeres, which could slow or even halt aging. Some experiments have successfully lengthened telomeres in labs, leading to rejuvenation of old cells. It's like giving your DNA a pair of biological Crocs. They're comfortable, they're durable, they're oddly effective. That's what this telomere extension is doing. Our next thing that scientists are doing is gene editing. You've heard of this before. They're using CRISPR. And if you don't know what CRISPR is, it's basically this technology to alter human DNA. And some researchers believe we can tweak our DNA to increase our lifespans by getting rid of things in our DNA that would otherwise be likely to kill us. For instance, like eliminating things in our DNA that might cause or lead to cancer or diseases, or or things like that. So scientists go in with CRISPR and they say, you look like in the future you may develop heart disease. We can take we can take those parts of your DNA and we can remove them. CRISPR and DNA manipulation is actually happening right now. And scientists have already extended the lifespan of certain animals through genetic modification. And this all kind of hints at a future for humans. Imagine a world where your biggest concern isn't, will I live to see 100, but will I live to see the heat death of the universe? It's terrifying. I don't want anything, I personally think it's terrifying. I don't want to be this genetically modified humanoid that is brought from, not born from CRISPR, but extended through CRISPR technology. I don't know if you've ever read Brave New World. I know in some schools it was like a mandatory read. It was one of those like To Kill a Mockingbird type books. But if you haven't read Brave New World, I highly suggest reading it. It very much taps into DNA manipulation and how this creates a caste system across Earth and how the upper class people have more access to gene manipulation and living healthier, longer lives and things like that. It touches on a lot more than that, but that is in the book. We're going to get a little bit more into that a little later. Not Brave New World, but into the disparities in the world of gene manipulation. The next thing scientists are doing are blood transfusions. Studies on parabiosis, where old mice receive blood from younger ones, and this has shown signs of rejuvenation. Some researchers speculate this could lead to anti-aging treatments for humans. I just want to know who's donating this blood, because when I was a teenager, if you asked me to donate my blood so that if it was like older sick people that were like, they need your blood to survive, I'd be like, okay. But a lot of times let's just face it, like these blood transfusions are going to be given to really rich weirdos. So like if I was a teenager, I'd be like, you're not getting my blood. You're not giving my blood to rich weirdos. I don't know where they're getting the blood for this, but this is all really just the beginning. And I haven't even really begun to touch on what if you could live forever without your body? If you're not sold on living forever in your current body, what if I told you you could leave your meat computer behind and become a digital being? I'm talking about uploading your mind, the process of transferring your consciousness into a computer. There's a computer scientist and I think he's a computer scientist slash physicist slash theoretical physicist. His name's Ray Kurzweil, and he talks about it very seriously and has books that talk about uploading our consciousness into computers. And even though this isn't technology yet, it could very well become technology in the future. And that's why some people have opted to, well, it's one of the reasons why some people have opted into something called cryonautics, which is basically just the process of freezing your human body or your brain in the hopes that future technologies will revive you. So people are actually doing this right now. If you're rich enough, you can have your body or your brain frozen so that when you die, it stays frozen so that when you die in the future, if there's technology that arises that could revive your consciousness, the scientists can have access to your brain or body so that they can implement these technologies and bring you back to life, bring you back from the dead. Right now, organizations like Alcor and the Cryonics Institute offer to freeze you after death, and they store you in liquid nitrogen at around minus 196 degrees Celsius until, theoretically, technology advances enough to bring you back from the dead. And while no one has been successfully revived, advancements in regenerative medicine and nanotechnology might change that in the future. And this makes me think of all of the comedic elements that could go along with this. Like imagine being frozen in the early 2000s, and then you wake up 3,000 years in the future and you have to explain your frosted tips of your hair to your great 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 grandkids. They're like, "Why was this a fashion statement? Why did you think this was a good idea?" You'll have to explain yourself. And there's no explaining that away. Not to throw shade at frosted tips. I never had frosted tips in the early 2000s. I missed that. I was more of a alternative. I was alternative, dude. Frosted tips were for boy bands and posers. So if I would have got frozen, I'd have been fine. I'd have had to explain my cut up jeans and like dyed green hair. They'd be like, "What did you do?" Although I feel like in 3,000 years, fashion will be so just, who knows? We can't predict what fashion would be in 3,000 years, but I feel like, honestly, it would be such a melting pot of things that any sort of fashion statement you were making would just be accepted. They'd be like, you can do what you want, be who you want, and that'll be a wonderful thing. So that is one thing I will say about living into the future or existing in the future. Although I would hate to live for the next 3,000 years, like live through that, it would be cool if I lived to be like 80 or 90 or something. Put me on ice and then put me on ice and then wake me up in 3,000 years just so I can see what we're working with before I die. Just so I can see what civilization looks like before I'm out. I think that would be cool. And I would sign up for that if I had the money and if I had the money to do it. I would definitely sign up for that just to see, just to get a glimpse at the future. Who doesn't want that? And now we're going to get into mind uploading. And this is a concept straight out of science fiction, but like I said before, it's being taken very seriously by tech moguls and neuroscientists. Basically, the idea is that you map every neural connection in your brain and upload your consciousness into a digital format. And theoretically, this would allow you to live on inside of a computer or inside of a robot or inside of some kind of simulated reality or into whatever digital format you wanted to be. I was kind of thinking about this when I was taking these notes, but how if you got uploaded to a digital format and your consciousness lived inside of software, there's kind of smart everything's right now. Like we started with smartphones, but now we have smart cars and smart refrigerators and smart toasters. Everything's a smart device. So in the future, if you're inside of software, could you move between these other smart devices? Like, I want to be a car. Could I be Knight Rider? Could this be Knight Rider? What was the Knight Rider car's name? I think it was Kit. I want to be Kit. I want to be someone's car that can like help them fight villains, Maybe not. Maybe being a car wouldn't be that cool. I want to be a cool robot dinosaur. Put me inside of something cool like that. But all of this mind uploading, it raises some pretty serious philosophical questions. If you upload your brain, is that still you, or is that just a copy of you? If we have this digital version of ourselves, would it be interacting with reality in the same way? Or would your original consciousness be gone? Or would you experience this continuity of thoughts? What would this look like? Are we able to replicate our consciousness in a digital format? I honestly think someday it could happen. I don't think we're there yet. I think we got a long way to go. But I think on a long enough timeline, we probably could copy our brains onto a computer. Scientists and philosophers will probably still be debating the implications once that is done. Maybe when we upload, we have the ability to shift through different simulations. I would be okay living 40 years or so inside of the Skyrim universe, or maybe I can shift into the No Man's Sky universe and check out different planets, or maybe right now I'm in a simulation and I'm just waiting for this one to end until I get uploaded to another game and then check out what that game's like. People like Ray Kurzweil, the computer scientist and physicist I mentioned earlier, he actually has talked about the simulation theory and says it's pretty likely that we are inside of a simulation and we just don't know it. We could already be uploaded. We could already be copies of some kind of consciousness or just complete computer programming existing within the simulation that has taken on consciousness. There's these YouTube videos where people go inside of games and they try to convince the NPCs, the non-playable characters, that they are inside of a simulation. And sometimes their responses are really interesting. The people who make these videos, they have the NPCs run off of an AI script so that they can interact with you in more dynamic ways, and they try to convince them that their world isn't real. I encourage you to look up some of these videos because they're really weird. If you had someone just show up, someone just kind of materialize in front of you and then be like, "Hey, your whole reality is fake. Everything you see and do is just a program. Follow me and I'll help you see beyond the veil." What would you do? You'd probably be like, "What is this?" That's kind of what a lot of them do inside of the game. Like, "You're crazy. I don't know what this is. Leave me alone." Those videos are worth checking out. Let's get into the ethical dilemmas of immortality. Let's say we figure it out. Let's say we discover how to become immortal. Whether it's biological, whether it's digital, or whether it's some kind of future technology that we can't even imagine yet. What happens then? And this is where I said we're gonna get back to talking about the ethics of all of this, like Brave New World, talking about this divide. Would everyone have access to this technology, or would eternal life be reserved for the ultra rich? And already billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Peter Thiel are investing heavily in longevity research. And this raises concerns about who will get access to these life-extending technologies. The way it probably will roll out, unfortunately, is that it will be a world where the top 1% live forever, and the rest of us are serving them avocado toast or stuck in traffic or wondering if we'll ever own a home. That's the sad reality of it. And maybe it'll be like all technologies. Maybe at first it will be the incredibly ultra wealthy 1%, and then eventually it will roll out to everyone else. But I feel like it'll be a spectrum of experiences. How much money you have is going to dictate how long you can live. And it's kind of like that now, unfortunately. If you have enough money to have access to experimental healthcare and experimental technologies, you can it's how all these really, not to derail myself, but it's how all these really wealthy, hyper rich politicians are living so long. They're just suckling the blood of the young, and they've got technologies that tap into the Illuminati, Anunnaki, reptilian, humanoid, time lords. You know it is. We all know it is. They're bajillionaires, and they just are tapping in to technologies we don't have access to lengthen their lifespans and make them 6 trillion years old. But that trend will continue into the future. And then we get into the psychological factors. What percentage of people even want to live forever? Who's in my boat on this? Who would want to do this? Some experts argue that mortality gives life meaning, and that without death, do things still hold the same weight? And many people who live past 100 report that they feel increasingly disconnected from the world as friends and family pass on. So would immortality be a blessing or a curse? In a lot of ways, it would be a curse. And I've already talked about some of them. Watching all of your loved ones pass away, watching empires rise and fall, and then we get into the endless amounts of reboots of your favorite intellectual properties. I don't want to see the 100th Ninja Turtles movie, and I don't want to see the 100th Ghostbusters movie. Some things just have to die. And some things, some things in the entertainment sphere, I don't want to live through it. I don't want to see the 9,000th Spider-Man movie, even though I love Spider-Man. I love all these things I'm mentioning. I just think on a long enough timeline, Hollywood will beat them so much into a pulp that you don't like them anymore. And I don't want to live through that. I don't want to be here for that. And then there's this obvious factor of what about overpopulation? If no one dies, where do we put everyone? Do we start building cities on the ocean, or do we just ship people off to moon bases? A lot of religions and philosophies view death as a necessary part of existence. And if we remove death from the equation, do we alter the very fabric of what it means to be human? Do we just become really, really old humans with a lot of time on our hands? I don't know. It's something that will be eternally debated upon, even when we do have access to these technologies that are unfolding. It's an interesting thought experiment. What does a future of immortals look like? Let's move on to the next segment of the show. This part of the show is called Let's Ask AI. Let's Ask AI. And I asked AI a simple question. I kept it in the lane of today's topic, and it gave me a somewhat simple response. I asked, should humans be searching for ways to become immortal? And AI responded, this is a complex philosophical question that reasonable people disagree on. Rather than take a stance, let me explore some key considerations. The pursuit of dramatically extending lifespans raises important questions about fairness and access. Would life extension technologies only be available to the wealthy, potentially exacerbating inequality? There are also ecological considerations about sustainability and resource consumption. From an individual perspective, some argue that mortality gives life meaning and motivates achievement, while others extend that more time would allow for deeper relationships and learning. The philosopher Bernard Williams wrote about potential downsides of immortality like endless boredom or loss of identity over vast time spans. There's also debate about whether resources spent pursuing immortality could be better used addressing immediate human needs and suffering. However, research into aging and longevity often yields other medical benefits. Instead of immortality, specifically, many researchers focus on health span, extending the period of healthy, active life rather than just lifespan. This might offer many benefits while avoiding some ethical concerns about immortality. Thanks for that response, AI. They kind of touched on something that I didn't touch on, which is where was it in here? About resources spent pursuing immortality. We have so many problems that we could address that are more concerning and more pressing than pursuing immortality. So even whatever camp you're in with this, whatever boat you sit in this, we can all agree on that. Like, we have problems that we need to address for people right now that aren't looking to make themselves immortal. That should be first on our to-do list. So thanks for bringing that point up, AI. Let's get into the next and final segment of the show. This is just, at the end of each show, I like to do a list of fun facts. And for this episode, just to kind of swing the other way but to also keep it in the same lane at the same time, you'll see where this is going. I compiled a list of fun facts all about death. What's more fun than death? Our first fun fact is that ancient Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the center of consciousness and removed the brain during mummification while carefully preserving the heart. Our next fun fact is The practice of planting trees at burial sites dates back thousands of years, as decomposing bodies provide nutrients that help trees grow. Modern green burials are reviving this tradition. And I love that. I love the idea of when you die, your body going back to the earth and helping to grow something new. To each their own, whatever you want to do after you die, it's your body, you do what you want. But I think that this is a really poetic and beautiful way to return to the earth. Our next fun fact is that hair and fingernails don't actually continue growing after death. The skin can retract, though, and it can make them appear longer. Next fun fact is that the death cap mushroom is responsible for most of the mushroom-related deaths globally, although it was considered a delicacy by Roman emperors who had food testers check their meals. So this very deadly mushroom today is responsible for most of mushroom-related deaths, but the Romans were eating it and preparing it, and just, it's weird. It's highly poisonous, but it's a delicacy. Was a delicacy. Could still be a delicacy in some areas, I don't know. Our next fun fact is that elephants are among the few animals known to display mourning behaviors, visiting the bones of deceased family members and gently touching them with their trunks. That's so beautiful and sad, and I love elephants. It's my favorite animal. Our next fun fact is that the tradition of covering mirrors during mourning, mourning, exists in multiple cultures, including Jewish, Mexican, and Victorian English customs. And what I read about this is that they cover mirrors during mourning so that you don't see yourself and you have a more introspective experience as you go through mourning the loss of a loved one. And you don't focus on the way you look or the way that you're presenting yourself. It's more about cover the mirror, because it's not time to see you. It's time to see inward. Don't look at the outward. Look inward. Remember your loved one. Experience this grief and this loss, and don't focus on the way you look or the way that other people are seeing you, because this is about you going through this and fully understanding your emotions and being one with your emotions. And I think that that's really beautiful. And this last fun fact kind of ties into our fun fact about the green burials. But in nature, the death of trees creates nurse logs. And these nurse logs provide essential habitats and nutrients for new forests to grow, showing how death supports new life. How beautiful is that? Can we live forever? The science says maybe, but the ethics say it's complicated. And immortality might be within our grasp, but it raises more questions than answers. Would it be a blessing, or would it be a curse? Would it be a triumph of science or a Pandora's box of problems? At a certain age, would we still have to pay taxes? Valid question. The quest for immortality is a testament to human ingenuity, ambition, and just sheer stubbornness. And whether we succeed or not, it's a journey worth exploring, even theoretically. However long you live and whatever you decide to do with your life, try to remember to move forward with empathy and understanding and as much love as you can. Don't forget to leave that like, comment, review, subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Like I said at the top of the show, I also have a Patreon you can join. That link is in the show's notes. I'll see everyone next week. And until then, remember to check on your mental health and remember to check on the mental health of your loved ones. Bye.
Thoughts. Analogue thoughts.
Analogue thoughts.
Analogue. Analog Thoughts.